Hi.
Is that what you meant by cold opening? Like,
Frazier, quite understandably the favorite. Foreman comes out punching with the right. Frazier in his usual style. Smoking is the way he puts it. His job to get inside. His best weapon, the left hook. Foreman is vulnerable to the hook. Oh, the crowd was misled when Joe fell back a little. There was a slip off balance. Historically, Frazier has not been a good first-round fighter. But historically, he has been a tremendous fighter.
Accurate.
A great champion. You saw the left hook land on Foreman. That's what he'll be working on all night. Foreman would like to keep punching and keep Frazier away from him with his punches. Joe's job to get inside. Steadily use that left hook. Whip. Oh, Foreman connected, as you saw. He's a big, strong boy. He likens this fight to the same kind of problem he faced. There's another left by George. He's getting into Frazier's head. We'll find out tonight how much the Ali fight took out of Frazier.
Quite a bit.
If anything. And we'll find out tonight just how good George Foreman is in punching and in taking a punch. I think he hurt Joe Frazier. I think Joe is hurt. Angie Dundee, Ali's trainer, right next to me is saying it. You may hear him. Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! The heavyweight champion is taking the mandatory 8 count, and Foreman is as poised as can be in a neutral corner. He is as poised as can be. We have a minute left in this first round, and already this fight is proving out what some have expected. Oh, that left is getting in there. Underneath, Archie Moore is yelling to Foreman. We've got the excitement here that we look for. Frazier is dazed. He is getting hit again and again and again. The same head that was hit so often by Muhammad Ali. Frazier is dazed. You see the countdown to the first round. Foreman has not panicked. Foreman is going about his job. Foreman is all over Joe Frazier. Frazier is down again, and he may be. No, he is rising. He is game. He doesn't know where he is. The mandatory 8 count. He doesn't know where he is. Now the round is about to end. 2 knockdowns in the first round of Joe Frazier. Down again. No saving by the bell. He's up, and so the fight continues. 3 knockdowns in the first round by George Foreman. The stool hasn't even been brought out yet for Frazier. What excitement! You're looking at Joe Frazier, Yancey Durham over. The crowd shocked, but the crowd here rooting for Foreman. Muhammad Ali was their hero. Now you're looking in slow motion. The right for the first knockdown, clean as a whistle. Oh, what a first round. Well, back in Frazier's corner. As you look at them working over Joe, the ice pack at the back of the neck to restore the senses. Let's go to the slow-mo for the second knockdown. The right again. Clean as a whistle again. They're waiting for the start now of round 2. There was no question about the first round. 3 knockdowns. Now Joe is coming out at him. Wants to come back in a hurry. You'll not find a gamer man than Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier, who went down 3 times in the first round. A caution from Arthur Mercani. Oh, he is all over Frazier again. He has Frazier in the corner. Frazier's knees buckled. He is down. He is down for the 4th time in the fight. George Foreman is doing to Joe Frazier what he did as a 19-year-old to a veteran Russian, a fellow named Ionis Shapoulis, in October of 1968 in the Mexico City Arena. A quick left from George. Another. Frazier is down for the 5th time in this fight. 5th time. 3 times in the first round, twice in the second. Mercani checked his senses, checked Frazier's senses. It's target practice for George Foreman. It is target practice. Frazier is ready to go again. Joe is standing. There he goes. 3 times. 3 times. The fight is stopped. No, it is not. It is not stopped.
It's over.
Angie Dundee is screaming, stop it. Ferdy Pacheco, Ali's doctor next to me. It is over. It is over. It is over in the second round. George Foreman is the heavyweight champion of the world.
Okay, that, guys, was obviously George Foreman and Joe Frazier from Kingston, Jamaica in 1973. We lost a great one. George Foreman was a great one. He was, 76-5, 76 and 5, 68 knockouts. To know how great he was, all you have to do is look at who he lost to. He lost to Muhammad Ali. He lost to Evander Holyfield. He lost to Jimmy Young, who was a terrific fighter, and a couple other guys. Those were the days, you know. Howard Cosell, down guys Frazier, calling the fights. Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, Joe Frazier, the 3 of the greatest heavyweights of all time. And the thing about George Foreman that I am always been so impressed about is in 1968 at the Olympics, when all these dickbags were doing their black power salutes on the stands and refusing to take their medals and doing their black power shit during the national anthem, when George Foreman beat the shit out of a Russian and won the gold medal in boxing at the Olympics after Muhammad Ali and Cassius Clay had won it in 64, Joe Frazier in 68, and George Foreman comes along. In 68, Frazier won it in 66, Ali in 62, and George Foreman comes along in 68. While all this other shit was going on, what does he do? He goes over and he gets an American flag and he waves that over his head while he celebrates. That's who George Foreman was. And unfortunately, I think we have another guy who was taken down not by an opponent, not by Muhammad Ali, not by Joe Frazier, but by Pfizer. Pfizer delivered the knockout blow. This guy, unfortunately, got conned into taking the jab. This is probably going to get us banned on YouTube for medical, but it's an American tragedy in some ways, because after he was a dour guy during his career, but then he found Jesus, and even while he was still boxing, and became the happiest guy on the planet. He had nothing but joy in his life. He had like 11 kids, all the boys. I think he named him George. He was eccentric, but he won the heavyweight title again. I think he was in his mid-50s, Steve Doran, when he won the heavyweight title. He knocked out Michael Moorer with one punch. He was losing the fight, but that guy got too close to that right hand of George Foreman and knocked him out. And just to give you a perspective, most of you guys out there, you know great heavyweights. You know Mike Tyson. That's what your standard is. Let me just tell you, Mike Tyson probably could have beaten Joe Frazier, but Joe Frazier was one of the toughest human beings who ever lived on the planet, who would take 3 punches just to deliver one. He was a massive talent. Would have been a hell of a fight. Ali would have destroyed Tyson. Foreman would have knocked Tyson out in about 2 seconds. Tyson couldn't handle big guys like that. He was a great fighter. I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts on the legacy of George Foreman and the tragedy of the end of his life because he should still be with us. And unfortunately, he's not. And what's left behind now are those great barbecue grills that I use fairly frequently. Steve, any thoughts?
Well, the thing is, I mean, he's the last. He's really one of the last of the true gentlemen, as far as being involved in sports. You know, back in the day, you know, they'd fight their fight. They'd come on television the next day. They'd be in a suit and tie, dressed appropriately. Ali was a lot of mouth, but mostly in jest. And you really didn't mind watching these guys because it wasn't all about them. It was about the sport. And they were just wonderful ambassadors for the sport back in the day.
Yeah. You know, Ali, Clay, a lot of it too was psychological intimidation of his opponents. He tried to get them really.
Well, I mean, with Ali, I mean, a lot of times he was joking around, but I'm saying he was, you know, when
he could back it up.
When push came to shove, he was a gentleman as well.
Yeah. Blake, any thoughts on the passing of the great one, George Foreman? Because this is a toxically masculine show. Yeah. We're going to talk about boxing because boxing is a sport. MMA is sports entertainment. And remember, guys, it's not gay if it's MMA. If you're on the floor wrestling with a dude and you have your nose up his asshole, hey, it's not gay if it's MMA. Just keep that in mind. Boxing is an actual sport. Go ahead, Blake. Do I have an opinion about this?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great era, and he's, one of the great
were you even alive, Blake? I'm just curious.
I wasn't alive for that fight, and that was interesting to see because that couldn't happen today. I wouldn't think that they're going to let the guy. And Howard Cosell even said he's taking it's target practice. Nowadays they would throw in the towel, but that was a huge high-profile fight. So I guess they let it continue, and the rules have changed. It's amazing that he actually was involved in almost 150 fights. That's a pretty staggering number. One of the great characters. I remember Hulk Hogan was talking about it because he was asking him, I believe, and Hulk Hogan's like 6'7", huge guy. He asked George Foreman to hit him like just in the shoulder, not in the face. And he said his whole arm went numb. Just the sheer power that he had.
Yeah.
So one of the great characters. So he'll be missed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he'll be missed. And it's interesting. The 70s had a lot of greatness in them. They had in tennis. You had Bjorn Borg and Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe all at the same time, who were great players, much better than the guys today. And same thing with the boxing. It was just phenomenal talents. It just was an era.
It was pleasant. It was pleasant. I don't watch any sports today.
Yeah,
and I mean, you know that. But back then, it was pleasant to watch. I mean, these guys were what I would consider true professionals. They weren't a bunch of overrated, spoiled thugs who just happened to be able to play a sport. I mean, they were enjoyable to watch. They were enjoyable to listen to when they were doing interviews. They would, go on shows that I loved, like the national hunting shows like Wide World of Sports and things of that nature. And so, you got to see the complete person, not just some, jerk running around the field.
And Howard Cosell, man, what a great commentator. That down goes Frazier thing. I mean, it's not a cultural meme anymore, but for a long time it was a cultural meme. People remembering that call. And there's you cannot overstate how shocking that result was, because Joe Frazier was the toughest human being on the planet, and he had beaten Muhammad Ali on March 8th, 1971, a year or so before. But Ali beat him up so bad that he was never the same after that. And there was
messed up his pretty face.
An era of three great fighters like that. Brooks, any thoughts on the passing of one of the greats, George?
You guys are all correct. This was an era of titans in boxing. We don't have that anymore. And the great that came up in Mike Tyson, he was so abrasive and he was so antisocial. He just didn't carry on the legacy and the art of boxing. And I didn't really get to meet Muhammad Ali, but I did get a chance to spend time with his lovely wife and one of his beautiful daughters. We spent the night drinking, and we went out and sang karaoke. By the way, she can really sing. And we closed the place down about, 2 o'clock in the morning. Very, very pleasant people, totally full of respect. Great respect for capitalism, for America, for what they did and the legacy that they left, and they never, ever soiled it.
Yeah, and again, just to sort of remind you guys, George Foreman was a big friend and supporter of Donald Trump.
Yep,
I'm sure he voted for him, as would have Muhammad Ali if he was alive. They were also relatively close friends because Trump always admired just how amazingly talented these guys were, and boxing is one of those things. Football's tough. Okay, tackle football's tough. Basketball can be a little rough. There's no description for what boxing puts you through. The amount of pain you have to go through to win a fight is.
People think a 3-minute round is a short amount of time. It's not. When you're in the ring, and I used to
get a shit beat out of you. Yeah, it's not. So, R.I.P. Rest in peace to the great George Foreman. I'm sorry, very sorry that you took the jab. Okay, let's move on, guys, to the news of the week. There is a big controversy. Well, at least they're trying to make a big controversy over the fact that some chit-chat went on between some people inside the Trump White House discussing last week's strike on the Houthis, who are a terrorist organization in what country are they in, Brooks? Dubai? Yemen. They're in Yemen, right? And there was a bunch of non-classified information discussed on a Signal, using a Signal app, which is relatively secure. And somehow, some way, a Trump-hating journalist, whose name escapes me because he's irrelevant, Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic, happened to get a hold of this Signal exchange, and then, of course, publish it and put it out there that he was on it. And of course, the pushback is, look at how irresponsible the Trump administration is, and they're talking about classified information and war plans while reporters listening. And of course, that's not what happened. Somebody leaked it to the reporter. We need to find out who it is. But they went after Pete Hegseth today, Secretary of Defense. Let's see what Pete had to say in response. Okay, that's not a video. I thought that was a video. Let's go to the Gateway Pundit and listen to a video. What the hell?
Can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic? And were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning, and you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
The NSC said it was authentic.
Okay, so this is feels like sounds like a contrived, very contrived national security incident. None of these reporters gives a shit whether American troops were put in danger. They apparently were not. Hexeth seemed a little bit defensive to me, but what do you think about that? And what do the political response, the coordinated political response strikes me as something that was a setup. It was planned. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's hard to trust some of the people that were involved in this. So it does reek of a setup, and they're trying to, make a mountain out of a molehill. It's like it's a scandal, but it's not that big of a deal once you actually go into it. Somehow, this journalist, the editor-in-chief of over at the Atlantic, who I guess was promoted into that position because he was being rewarded, perhaps, for spreading lies, getting us into the Iraq War 20 years ago. So he's got a lot. And yes, he's a never Trumper. Maybe they were leaking information to see if he would. They could be setting stuff up. They had a lot of problems with leaks in the first Trump administration. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. I don't know if it's going to be a problem for Pete or if it's just this national security guy, this Michael Waltz. But I guess they're going to try to make it look like the Trump administration is incompetent. But it's
as they always do. Brooks, what are your thoughts on this? And I think politically it comes to nothing myself.
There was a mistake made, but the mistake was not using Signal. Signal is an approved app. It was put on Secretary Radcliffe's computer when he got his computer from the CIA. It is encrypted on both ends. The mistake appears to be Jeffrey Goldberg's mistake. And what I would have done if I was the DNI or if I was Pete Hegseth, I would have said, look, one of the things that we suspected is that we had a spy, we had a mole in our organization. And so what we did is we set up this phone call on Signal and we spoke about current events, but nothing classified, just stuff out of the news. And what happened was the mole was present and the mole published what we said on that conversation. And now we know who the mole is, and we will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law.
Well, do you think that's what actually happened, though? This is my question.
Yeah, I really do, because I know what President Trump would do when he has meetings like that. He would say, if you're not present in this room, you're not on the line. Let everybody else go. If you're not in this room, this line is not secure. He doesn't trust any of those apps. But Signal was trusted. It is an official app. It's been used all through the Biden administration as a encrypted method of communication. The mistake was somehow that reporter's phone number got into the mix, and he sat in a parking lot in the store and listened. Now, his big mistake was he should have said, "Oh my God, this sounds classified to me. I better hang up." He stayed and he spied, and then he released the information as quickly as he could to discredit the Trump administration.
He'd better release it. That way he can claim some sort of, journalistic protection. Oh, I was just covering a story that fell.
He's not a journalist. He's a spy.
Yeah, he's a spy. Steve, what do you think about this particular issue? And what do you think?
I think it's definitely a wake-up call for the Trump administration. See, back when I was operating, we didn't even have good radios. I mean, that was a reality. Once you went on your mission, when you discussed your mission, it was face-to-face. Right. There were documents that you were given prior to being sent off. And once you were underway, there was really no recalling you. I mean, we had radios, but they sucked. You couldn't hear anything. A lot of them were line of sight where you had to have a plane overhead to communicate. And if there was no plane, you were pretty much on your own. So, but there's a lot to be said for that, because we were very rarely, in fact, I can't remember one time that we were ever compromised, because we didn't use electronics like they do today. And people are very, flippant when it comes to things. Oh, this is secure. Only so many people can be on it. Baloney. That's not the way it works. Like Brooks was saying, if the other guy's phone number was included on that conference call, I mean, and who knows, he may not have been the only one. People just don't take the time to make sure that everything's secure. In fact, those meetings should never, ever, ever, ever take place on some type of app like that.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
you can't all be in the same place at the same time, and you're in separate places. So you need a way to be able to discuss these things.
Well, there are secure means of communication that aren't an app on a stupid computer.
Well, it's a good app. What should have happened? I've been on these calls before. What should happen is the moderator should say, "Who is on the call? Who is 704? Who is 980? Who is 425?" They go through and have all those people on the call identify themselves. And if they're not cleared, they are deleted. And then the meeting begins.
Yeah. So, Steve, Steve, what do you do at this point? Does the reporter, should he be prosecuted? If this was classified information, should he be prosecuted?
First of all, if it's as Brooks says, there's really nothing they can do to him because it was their fault that he got the information.
That's right.
There's nothing that can be done. In fact, they just needed to move on and not make the same mistake again. I don't see it as a big deal, and I don't see it as a big deal because the missions were successful. But my thing is that it's on the Trump administration. I mean, it's their fault. It's whoever set this call up, whoever set this thing up. It's that individual's fault. It's the reporter. I mean, if I get a call, if you call me by accident and I choose to listen in, it's not my fault. I can listen all I want. You called me. I didn't call you.
Do you agree with Brooks that this was a setup to catch a mole, or do you think it's just a cock up?
I think they just screwed up.
Yeah, I do too. I'm saying the way they should have spun it was, we did this on purpose to expose a mole. That's why we didn't discuss anything classified. That's the way they should have spun it. Okay.
All right. Any further thoughts, Blake, on this one, or do you think it just sort of disappears by next week?
Yeah, I think they just have to have some kind of a win for the public in their mind, whatever it is, as long as it's anti-Trump. But yeah, if there's not really much to it, it'll just fade away like usual. The outrage machine.
All right. Moving on to the next story in AOC news. AOC, our favorite Nazi Latina, big booty Latina, has been out on a speaking tour with Bernie Sanders and herself. And AOC has stated very, very clearly that she thinks that America needs a Democratic Party that, wait for it, farts harder for you.
We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us together. We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us together.
We need a Democratic Party that farts harder.
In your general direction.
Yeah, I fart in your general direction. Okay, now this is interesting because there were these rallies. This is the Bernie Sanders says, "Oh, this video speaks for itself." 34,000 people in Denver, Colorado, which, by the way, is an extremely blue state, coming out to hear him and AOC talk about the Democrats need to fart harder for Americans. In reality, however, one of the really great guys that we have on our side, which is really, really good, is a guy named Tony Saruga. And if you don't follow Tony Saruga on Twitter, you actually really should be following him because he's pretty brilliant. What he does is he pays for your cell phone data. Your cell phone data is collected by all these different companies and they sell it to people. And guess what? He buys it. So what did he find out? He found out that, in fact, there were 20,000 people there, which is still very impressive. But at these various rallies, about 84% of the people who are showing up are Democratic poll workers who've been to multiple Democratic rallies in the last year. He's tracked their cell phone data, 9 Kamala Harris rallies, Act Blue rallies, Antifa rallies and riots. He's tracked all these people. So basically, there is nothing at all organic about these so-called movements, and he's tracked this stuff and published it. And I guess the key thing here is if they're not able to generate anything organic, why are they doing this? Because politically, to me, this whole thing seems very odd at this point in time. Steve, why are they even bothering to do this? They just got creamed.
It's all smoke and mirrors, is all it is. They want to give the impression that people are tired, that people are already tired of President Trump, that changes need to be made, that he's hostile to the citizens of the United States of America with his Nazi partner Elon making all these cuts, and people are starving to death and not able to access education or medical or their prescriptions, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's what the Democrats do, and if they can make it appear that there's a big turnout on these things, then they feel like it gives them way more power.
Sorry, I just really love looking at these AI. Is that AI generated or is that really AOC? I just love looking at that big Latina boobs and that big booty. So we're just going to leave that up there for a while. Brooks, what do you think about these fake rallies? And again, they're trying to create this impression, and all it's led to so far is the vandalization of Tesla Cybertrucks. Which, you dumbasses, hey, guess what? Every Tesla has like 7 cameras on it. So you're going to be identified and you're going to be arrested and you're going to be prosecuted. And it's led to fire bombings and Molotov cocktail attacks and graffiti in Tesla dealerships. These are all crimes. So couldn't you maybe go back and say Bernie Sanders and AOC are inciting violence and part of a conspiracy to commit?
It's a little bit worse than that. It's a little bit worse than that, because AOC and Bernie are both heralded among Democrats as being very, very good at fundraising. This makes money for them, a lot of money. But the thing that they need to be careful of is there are criteria for U.S. Code 19, which has to deal with RICO, and that is that you have to organize a violent act, and that means you give the orders and somebody follows them out, and that there's money involved, and that there are prison sentences involved for the crimes. That all qualifies for RICO. That's organized crime. So Bernie and AOC can be investigated, and are going to be investigated for RICO charges for organizing this nationwide violent campaign against Tesla. And you're right. The average sentence is going to be 5 years, but there are some people who are going to get up to 20 years if they use a firebomb on a charging station, a dealership, or a car. But these Tesla vehicles have all high-res cameras on them, and all these people are being identified. And let me tell you what's going to happen to them. They're not just going to pay a fine. They're going to go to prison. They're going to lose their job. They're going to lose their wife and kids. They're going to lose the ability to fly, and they're going to lose the ability to have a U.S. passport ever.
Wow. Okay. So you think this is being done primarily to fundraise?
Yes,
which, of
it's
course,
all money.
Because it's not and the thing is, the problem, of course, is that, but if they're all Democrats, if they're all Democratic Party workers and apparatchiks and various sycophants, how much money are they going to get out of those people? They're not drawing anything organic, so they're not bringing in anything new.
$20 at a time, and they are the champions among Democrats as far as fun. And the other one is Liz Warren. These three haul in more money than all the other Democrats combined.
Well, nobody wants to see Liz
Warren. The
only
problem is that most of the vehicles that they're tampering with belong to Democrats who are now switching to the Republican Party.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, retarded Democrats who believe in climate change, which we're going to get to later in the show. Nobody wants to see Liz Warren in a Nazi.
I don't know, though. Democrats don't hold a job where they can buy an $85,000 truck. I just don't see it.
Some of them are executives at YouTube.
A lot of them, look at how much money they make working at the universities. There's one staff member for every student.
Right, they're all making $100,000, 6 figures off of our tax money, which Doge is finally finding out, getting paid through USAID, right? So, TV's Blake Wally, you like me do not want to see Liz Warren in a swastika bikini like AOC here. But why don't you give us your opinion about this stuff, and what do you think about this story?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have nailed it. And yeah, it might be a big fundraiser. Maybe that's because they get their USAID money cut. So they're sending out some of their best salesmen. That happens to be Bernie and AOC, the radical wingnuts of it. And yeah, I guess the days of the Democrats and their grassroots days are over, and it's all just astroturf activism. And it's interesting. Yeah, bring up that Tony Siragusa, or not Siragusa, but
Saruga.
Saruga. There you go. Yeah, that's kind of puts that theory to.
I'm stealing that, Blake. AstroTurf activism. I'm stealing.
And by the way, there's one more thing to consider. Did you see the shot from behind where they showed AOC and Bernie together in the crowd in the background? They had to use a wide angle lens because AOC's ass is getting about that wide. Genetics is catching up with that girl.
Hey, man, we still love our big booty Latinas.
Yeah, fat bottom girls make the rockin' world go round.
Again, AOC, if you're watching, come to Vegas. I will fuck all the stupid out of you. TV's Blake Wally. Do you have a final thought before my crudeness there? Sorry to the ladies that are watching, but it's Toxically Masculine Tuesday. You shouldn't be watching if you're easily offended. Blake.
Well, I guess I'm enjoying them going through the identity crisis right now as they try to rebrand themselves. But right now, they're just still like embracing the crazy characters out of their party. So I can't expect these people to, go any further or run in 2028. So, yeah.
And what did you guys think of the clip of Bernie freaking out when you want me to go get it? Let me go get the clip of Bernie Sanders sat for an interview, and he was asked about
the one where he walked off.
Yeah, he was asked about Miss Ocasio-Cortez in the Senate, and let's actually just sort of escape this. I gotta love those boobs, even though they're AI. Sanders interview AOC. Let's see if we can find it in here. Yeah, here we go.
Alexandra is extraordinary. I am so impressed by her work in Congress.
Hang on. He's about to be asked whether he thinks she should be in the Senate. So
Alexandra is extraordinary. I am so impressed by her work in Congress and she inspires young people all over the country.
Would you like to see her join in the Senate?
Right now we have, as I said, just a whole lot of people in the Congress. Okay, Jonathan, thanks.
Wait, I got one more. This is important.
Well, I asked you. Okay, you want to do nonsense? Do nonsense.
No.
I don't want to talk about inside the Beltway stuff. I got 32,000 people.
I was just asking you about AOC because she was out there with you.
Fine, but I don't want to talk about this. What was the last question?
I was just going to ask you one more question about you. I mean, that's all. I was literally your last.
What is your question?
Well, I mean, it's easier.
So, what did you guys make of that? Of him freaking out? Freaking out when he asked about whether AOC should be in the Senate, Brooks.
Yeah, he was about to get his wrinkly old ass in a ringer right there. Best to bail out.
Okay, well, all right, Steve, you have any thoughts on why he would react like that?
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously AOC is used as a pawn. She's stupid. She has no business being in any kind of government. She really has no business even being a bartender because you'd probably go bankrupt with the way that she runs the till. But that's all she is to them. I mean, she's somebody that they parade out there, they use to collect money, and that they use to their benefit. But they really don't want her around any other time, and they damn sure don't want her in the Senate.
Bernie almost said, "Look, sexual favors can only get you so far in government."
Pretty much.
Blake, what do you make of that reaction? Because I don't know what to make of it, honestly.
Yeah, it kind of shows the internal turmoil that must be happening behind the scenes. And I guess he was really trapped there on the spot because, as twisted as his ideology is, he's going to try to be reasonably honest in his own little perspective. And if he's being asked, if I caught that correctly, if the host was asking him if AOC should someday be a senator, that is a big reach. Yeah, agree with Steve there. She's barely worth being a bartender.
And then he called that nonsense. He's like, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm not going to deal with this nonsense.
Because if he publicly comes out and says that she should be a member of the Senate, They're gonna.
Yeah.
Okay, but Blake had a point. Blake, go to your point there. Finish.
Well, yeah, I guess he's got no one to pass the torch to. She's not a protege. She's just a mascot.
Yeah.
So she's way over her head. And so, yeah, I guess he had to run away from that because he couldn't answer that. There was no.
And by the way, once she hits the wall, so to speak, they won't want her around at all then.
Now, once she loses the big booty Latina hotness, that's going to be it for her career. She's not going to be an Elizabeth Warren. Bill Owen called that a swastikini. I like that, Bill. We're going to go with swastikini. Swastikini. And Deb from Sacramento. Yeah, big booty hose wherever you're at. Deb wants me to F her stupid away. Deb, that's pretty kinky. You're a voyeur then? You want to watch? Okay, Deb, I guess, you're a friend of the show. You've been around a long time. We can deal with that. All right. In other interesting developments, speaking of things political, there was a fairly major development today, which is President Trump has signed, I guess, a federal law, an executive order, which becomes a federal law, that U.S. elections for the president will now require proof of citizenship in all federal elections. Election experts said Trump is claiming power he doesn't have. Instead of lawsuits over the measure, we're all but guaranteed. So obviously we're going to get some district judge overturning this. But Trump signed an executive order Tuesday requiring people to provide documents proving they are citizens when they register to vote, a mandate that could prevent millions of Americans from voting. No, you know what? It won't prevent a single American from voting.
That's right.
Because if you don't have fucking ID to vote in an election, you're not eligible to vote in the election. That's just the way it is, and you're not an American.
You can't do anything without ID. Nothing.
Yeah. But you can. But they want you to be able to vote. And this is an interesting perspective because what Trump is arguing, in essence, is that state elections are the purview of the state, but in federal elections for federal offices, the federal government has a say in it. Blake, what do you think about that idea?
I think it's basic common sense, and he's giving everybody a 4-year head start. Like if somebody actually didn't have ID, they could do it. So it's not like he's trying to do something like 2 months before the election because he thinks he's going to lose. So it's ridiculous. He's just ensuring the integrity of the election. This is basic stuff that happens everywhere else in every civilized country around the world and most states. And we saw that in-person ballot, in-person voting, Trump dominates. And it was Kamala who won in the places where they didn't have to show voter ID, and it was Biden who won by mail-in ballot. So we know that there's shenanigans, and of course with the illegal aliens that were coming in droves, millions, umpteen over the last few years. So he's stopping their plans, and they don't like it.
All right. Deb from Sacramento says,
"Yeah, we just went through all that trouble to import all those voters, and now you're not letting them.
You're kicking them all out." Yeah, but I mean, Brooks, what do you think about this constitutional argument that that the federal government can oversee elections for federal offices and ensure that they're secure?
I see their point in the sense that elections are run by the states, not by the federal government. But there should be federal guidelines that there must be a minimum amount of identification required for federal elections. The states can do whatever the hell they want for governor or attorney general or whatever. But when it comes to the federal elections for the president of the United States, they must have ID to vote in that election. He can do it. All that can happen is, and I would tell you right now that there'll be at least 34 states that would go for this. That's called a constitutional amendment. And it could be done by a convention of states.
Yeah, that's a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of months. Steve, what do you think about this idea? I mean, the Constitution does say the states shall run the elections. However, what we've discovered, of course, is that the states aren't running the elections correctly, and these courts are not allowing those states to be challenged and those results to be challenged. So isn't our system completely broken, and is this any different? Is this just not a constitutional way or a possibly constitutional way of enforcing it? What would you do?
Well, there has to be.
You were a sheriff of a county. what would you do if you were the sheriff of a county in Arkansas, say Izzard County, and they tried to impose this on, the presidential election? What would be the constitutionally correct response for a sheriff in that situation?
Well, there has to be checks and balances in every election, and so to have somebody present ID to prove who they are before they cast a ballot for the federal system, I don't see that as a violation of anybody's constitutional rights. I don't see it as a violation of states' rights. Correctly, the states are supposed to run the elections. The local jurisdictions run their own elections. But I have to show my ID to get on an airplane in the state of Arkansas. If I would go down to Little Rock and I want to get on an airplane, I have to show an ID. It's a federal rule. So, to identify yourself as an American citizen, to me, is not a violation of your constitutional rights.
Yeah, and I guess why shouldn't there be a law that, okay, you can run your own elections, but everybody that votes has to show proof of U.S. citizenship? Is there?
I don't know why anyone would have a problem with that. I really don't.
Well, people who want to steal elections.
Well, of course, people want to steal elections, but I believe that every election should be audited. Every single precinct should be audited after the end of every election because, we've seen voter fraud go wild. I've seen it, even on local levels where the person who wins is hated by everyone in the county, or the city, or whatever.
Yeah,
and they end up with all, like 98% of the vote. How does that happen? So I believe that they should also be audited.
Okay. Interesting comments here. Deb from Sacramento says, Mike, if you ever F AOC, I want to. Deb, is this your roundabout way of asking me for a dick pic? If so, just come. You got my Twitter. You can DM me. Just send me a request. I'm a generous guy, and as my ex-wife once said, I just wish you weren't so damn generous with your cock, Mike. That's not true. I made that up, but it was a great joke from. Anybody know where that's from? A great old movie from the 1970s. It's a line from, it was the Roy Scheider movie. Now I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, it was about Bob Fosse. I forget the name of it, but just
all that jazz. Thank you.
His girlfriend says to him, "You're a really generous guy, Bob. I just wish you weren't so damn generous with your cock." All right, that is where we are in terms of relationship advice. Now, interestingly, something else came up. All the Democrats destroying Teslas, which are electric cars, which are supposed to save the environment, which we all know is bullshit, kind of leaked out a little bit again today. Now the Democrats are really, really upset because they think saving the environment should be a national security priority. Climate change, which doesn't exist. Let's watch this exchange between Tulsi Gabbard and Democrat Senator King, asking her today in some congressional hearings about the national security threats to our country. Apparently, this guy thinks that weather is a threat to our national security. Let's listen.
I want to move on. One note that surprised me. I've been on this committee now this is my 13th year. Every single one of these reports that we have had has mentioned global climate change as a significant national security threat, except this one. Has something happened? Has global climate change been solved? Why is that not in this report? And who made the decision that it should not be in the report when it's been in every one of the 11 prior reports?
I can't speak to the decisions made previously, but this annual threat assessment has been focused very directly on the threats that we deem most critical to the United States and our national security. Obviously, we're aware of occurrences within the environment and how they may impact operations, but we're focused on the direct threats to Americans' safety, well-being, and security.
How about how they will impact mass migration, famine, dislocation, political violence, which is the finding, by the way, of the 2019 annual threat assessment under the first Trump administration. You don't consider that a significant national security threat?
For the intelligence community, being aware of the environment that we're operating in is a given. What I focused this annual threat assessment on, and the IC focused this threat assessment on, are the most extreme and critical direct threats to our national security.
Let me ask a direct question. Who decided climate change should be left out of this report after it's been in the prior 11? Where was that decision
I
made?
gave direction to our team at ODNI to focus on the most extreme and critical national security threats
Your
that we
direction
face.
include no comments on climate change?
Senator, as I said, I focused on the most extreme and direct national
That's not a
security
response
threats
to my question.
that we face.
Did you instruct that there be no finding in terms of climate change in this report?
I don't recall giving that instruction.
Okay. So, again, this kind of went on and on. I don't know why she just didn't say, fuck yeah, I gave the order. Climate change is bullshit. Okay. There is no, climate is not changing. Okay. The earth is not getting warmer. Everything the environmentalists have ever said for the last 60 years has been fucking wrong. And none of it is being caused by human beings. It's being caused by this big orange thing in the sky called the sun. That's what makes your climate change one way or the other. And if you believe anything other than that, you're a fucking idiot. That's what I would have said. Why do you think, Blake, she was being so... Have I started with Steve yet tonight? Steve, have I started with you tonight?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Blake's turn.
Why do you think she was being so evasive? Why didn't she just say, fuck yeah? It's not a threat. Are you kidding me? You're talking... The weather is a threat? Give me a break. Why didn't she just say that?
She should have, but I think, the media would have absolutely roasted her alive, and she never would have heard the end of it. So she didn't fall for the bait, I guess. But it was embarrassing watching, a grown man sit there and try to make this a national security issue. And you're absolutely right, Mike. The models are wrong. Temperatures are not really rising. The water levels are not rising either. We pulled out of the climate accord. They haven't shown, they're constantly changing their models. They haven't shown any evidence of this. Now, if it was a national security risk, I mean, maybe back in the, was the 70s, they're trying to remove like the lead out of the gasoline. That was actually like a major thing that did help impact health for the country. That could have been a national security issue, perhaps. But no, this climate change stuff, they're running out of steam, but they're still playing with it and trying to make it, it's like it's a big scare, but it's not. It's just fear mongering, and it's over. People aren't buying it anymore.
The thing is, Brooks, every president knows this is horse shit. But none of them have, Reagan knew it was horse shit. Trump 1 knew it was horse shit. Trump 2 knows it's horse shit. Why doesn't he go to war with these people? Because the environmentalism is it's USAID 2.0. It's another way to get money appropriated that they can money launder to Democrat causes, to steal elections at the local level and elect senators and congressmen that are against the American people. Why doesn't Trump just put a fucking stop to it and say, this is bullshit?
They should. I mean, all they have to do is hold up the picture of the Plymouth Rock, 1607. Yeah. It's still at sea level.
Yeah.
Sea level has not changed. Look at the tidal pools in Greece. I went and looked at it myself. I went there and looked at them. They're still at sea level. And when was that? Oh, about 1,000 years before Christ. They're still there, still at sea level. Nothing has changed. The climate undulates a little bit, but over time, there's been no change. If anything, there's a long-term gradual cooling trend.
Yeah. There's Plymouth Rock. 1620, sea level remains unchanged. There it is. It's still sitting there. Steve, any thoughts on why Trump won't go to war on this? Is it just it's not time yet, or it's not worth the bother because it's so stupid? What do you think?
I have no idea. I mean, I get so sick and tired of these climate change people and the carbon capture and the carbon credits and all that kind of nonsense. It's like when we were kids, what was going to happen by 2019 or something like that? We were all going to freeze to death. And the world would freeze over. We wouldn't be able to grow crops. Everybody would be frozen in their homes and that type of thing. And it's like they constantly change the model. They constantly, sling more BS, and it needs to stop. It needs to be not funded by the federal government. If private entities want to fund it, go ahead. But it is a waste of taxpayers' money. And I am like up to here with it. I'm sick of hearing about it. Even listen to that guy talk. I just wanted to punch him in the face.
Yeah, I know you did.
It is not a national security threat. We prepare for tornadoes and storms and things like that, and we respond to those accordingly. It is not a national threat because tornadoes are always going to hit, hurricanes are always going to hit, droughts are always going to hit. So what do? We prepare for those, so when they do, we can respond to them. That's the extent of it.
Correct.
Yeah. And actually, storms, have gotten milder since the 1960s. They were actually a lot worse then, probably because we were less prepared, so they had more of an impact. Let's face reality, folks. Aliens are a bigger fucking national security threat than climate change.
Mike Barra is more of a national security threat.
Correct. And you know what? Next year, Tulsi, if I was you, you know what I'd put in there as number 11 also to be concerned about is aliens. Let's put aliens in as a possible national security threat just to fuck with these people. And like Joe Evans points out, climate change is a way. And by the way, Joe Evans, thank you for the X39 LifeWave patches. Link in the description of this video. I'm trying them out. I've had people that have gotten awesome results with these. Check them out. They're pretty good stuff. But the answer to climate change, Steve, and the answer to global warming is always higher taxes and less freedom for you and me. Yeah, that's what I find fascinating about it.
Well, I mean, I just get so sick and tired of the fear-mongering that goes on over nothing. I mean, it's nothing. Like I said, all of these things are going to continue to happen until the end of time. And all we can do is respond to them. But this is like, mass migration across the country. What? It's total bullshit.
Yeah. And you know what? If you have mass migration, you just don't let them in. That's why we built a wall. You're not coming here. So, mass migrate.
The only kind of mass migration that makes sense is if there's a coming ice age. If that happens, the wheat belt will move 300 miles south from Alberta, Canada to Billings, Montana. And if that happens, the land that will keep the world free and fed at that point is along the equator.
There we go. All right. I wanted to go to a couple of more controversial issues, conspiratorial issues before we got done here. There's some radar data that came out that was apparently taken underneath the pyramids, the Great Pyramids of Giza, and according to some people, this is what it showed. Let's just spin this video from TikTok and see what we got here. There's these long tubular structures, almost holding the pyramids up, and that's an example of how people are illustrating this. But what I find fascinating about this is that that's not really, as I understand it, what the data shows. It shows these spaces that could be any number of things underneath the Giza Plateau. If it in fact looks like that, Brooks, and I suppose you know something about this, I'm hoping, because I don't know a lot about it. I kind of ignored it, but then that's artificial construction, and that makes the pyramids a bit more exotic than just a bunch of freaking slaves dragged 4,200 ton blocks, 700 feet in the air and placed them there somehow. So it could be a case for aliens made the pyramids, if that in fact, or is this simply some sort of geological structure that's being misinterpreted? What do you know about this?
Well, you're in luck, because I did a program on this on Sunday. The issue is I happen to be one of the world experts on ground probing radar. It's why I was chosen to be in the documentary Holes in Heaven. This kind of technology to look at the ground in that kind of detail does not exist, period. This is all animated. All of it is animated. There is no ability to look into the ground with that kind of technology, with that kind of detail. The whole SAR premise is flawed. You cannot do interferometry from 220 miles away on sand. It cannot be done.
Okay, so you're saying that this is a false reading. It's a grift. Okay.
It's a grift. That guy went viral with his video, and he's had 30 million views on it, and everybody's picking it up. And these Italians have had their little conference. But I'm telling you, if that technology exists under the pyramid, it was built 300,000 years ago and has been covered in sand, and somebody built the pyramid over it 5,000 years before Egyptus ever walked into the Nile River Valley.
Interesting. Okay. Steve, Blake, did you guys hear about this week? And do you have any thoughts on it? Blake?
Yeah, I mean, it looks awesome. I'd love to think that that was actually real. Some of the pictures that they were showing going so far, because that would be, you know, almost definitive proof that there was an ancient civilization that was far more advanced than we are now. And maybe, I don't know what Graham Hancock did. I think Rick said he was investigating it. I do love his show, Ancient Apocalypse. And I know he did the ground penetration in the Amazon. And they were able to find
Graham Hancock. Right. Graham Hancock is kind of like Richard C. Hoagland. And John Anthony West, a very famous rogue Egyptologist, once said of Richard C. Hoagland, my co-author on Dark Mission, who I love and support, that if jumping to conclusions was an Olympic sport, Richard C. Hoagland would have 10 gold medals. I kind of tend to, you know, I mean, to a certain extent, you can say that about Graham too. He's totally willing to embrace anything that supports his theory that human civilization is vastly older than we think, which is probably correct. But I don't know. I don't feel like Graham's an expert on ground penetrating radar. So that's just...
No, he's a journalist. He's not a scientist. And he'll admit that.
Just like you. You are a journalist.
Exactly. I have no idea. But I think Brooks kind of ruined it for me, but it's all good. No, I'd rather have the truth.
All I can say, Billy Carson, prove it. Dig the fucking hole.
There you go. I don't think they want us digging. They try to avoid us like at Göbekli Tepe and so many other things. It's like they don't really want us to know where we came from. They want us to just all believe that we came from simple hunter-gatherers. But
Billy Carson is a fucking clown who got arrested for identity theft. It's not even his real name.
That's his latest. That's his latest name, Billy Carson.
Yeah,
he had another name.
Yeah, other known aliases. William Carlstrom. Look him up on mugshots.com. Steve Doran, Trail Boss. Do you have any thoughts on this, or do you give a shit at all?
I have to, on the ground penetrating radar, I have to digress to Mr. Brooks, but I will say this. I think the fact that any alien involvement is total bullshit when it comes to the building of the pyramids. People are brilliant. They've been able to pull off things that are absolutely astronomical throughout history. In fact, we're at the dumbest point in history, in my opinion, that there has ever been, because we have people like EOC in office, and people back then could get the job done. If they wanted to do it, they'd figure out a way to do it, and they'd get it done. Screw your alien freaking synopsis.
Well, you know, Steve, I can prove that you're right about that, because I once had a past life reading in which I was told that I was an engineer on the Great Pyramids and that we built them. So I think you're absolutely right. That's proof right there that you're absolutely right.
I mean, my thing is it's like people, when you look at, you know, when I was a policeman and I would go into houses in Detroit, and these things were, I mean, they were remarkably done. Now, they were aged, they were damaged because of who was currently living in them. But I mean, these things were absolutely remarkable, the way that they were put together. I mean, you could not see a seam in anything. Yeah. All of the molding was hand carved, and it was beautifully and perfectly done. Try to get somebody to do that today. Yeah. Never happened.
I will say this: there is an awful lot about the pyramids that don't make sense, that an ancient technology, human technology, was able to build them. Some of those stones are huge, and cranes today could not lift them. So how the fuck did they get them up there? I tend to think that we had different technologies back then, and we didn't use. Brooks, by the way, somebody wants to know your.
Just because it's an ancient civilization doesn't mean that they weren't smart enough to invent a technology that
in
could
fact,
do
it's
that.
interesting because as you look at human civilization, two things about it. It starts from the sky down. Okay, human civilization first appears at high altitude, as if, I don't know, 12 or 13,000 years ago there was a great flood, and it starts out smart and then gets progressively dumber until we started getting a little bit smart again about 200 or 300 years ago. So it is really
and like I said, I was using like the molding as an example. You find me 10 people today who can duplicate that work, and I'll give you 10 grand.
Yep.
They can't do it. They absolutely cannot do it.
And the thing is, too, just because we don't know how they did it or how they could have done it with what we think their technology was, doesn't mean it was aliens. So that's
no. I mean, that's automatically the go-to. Oh, we can't do it, so an alien must have done it.
I don't know.
Baloney.
Therefore, aliens. Yeah, by the molester. Okay, as the molester once said. All right.
These are isolated structures, kind of all over the planet, though. So it's almost like they were in.
Yeah, and the Giza pyramid is nothing compared to the one in Indonesia. And if you go to Chichen Itza, that one's even more magnificent.
Yeah. So it is fascinating, and there is something to it, and there's probably a lot of ancient esoteric knowledge that they had.
I bet if we asked Brooks to build a pyramid, he could do it.
I don't know. You'd have to.
Might take him some time.
You'd have to get an airship that can lift 60-ton stones.
Well, you know what the Russians do is they build, the tall. Have you seen the tall, thin pyramid hieroglyphs that the Egyptians have? It's tall and thin. I could find it. They build pyramids shaped like that to those proportions with all organic materials. In other words, the nails are not metal. Nothing is metal. It's all wood. Everything is made from wood, and they place them at different places in Russia. And they say it's to prevent earthquakes. And when is the last time you heard about an earthquake in Russia? I'm just leaving that there. So, something must be going on there. All right. One more conspiratorial, controversial issue of the day. Donald Trump was interviewed this week by Clay Travis of Outkick the Coverage. Talked about sports. He was on his way to the wrestling match, which, by the way, Trump got wildly cheered at the NCAA wrestling finals the other night. And I was actually at Rod Stewart here in Vegas with my brother the other night, just because Rod's 80 and I'd never seen him, and I thought I better see this guy before he dies, right? He's a famous singer, right? And he used to be, before he went disco and sappy ballads, he was actually considered a great rock vocalist. Unfortunately, he didn't play very many of those songs. But at one point in the show, he says something about, this song, there's some song that he wrote about some gay dude who got killed in the 70s. And he says, gay. He goes, that's a word that's not very popular at the White House, which, first of all, is bullshit. How about Rick Grinnell, who's a cabinet member appointed by Donald Trump, who's openly gay, right? And the funny thing was, there was like almost no reaction. A couple of people went, And so you have an arena like with 4,000 people in it, presumably from all over the country. And there were no wild cheers. So it's like these libtards in entertainment are so out of touch with the mood of the country right now. Like, nobody reacted. Everybody was like, oh, you could tell everybody's just like, can you just sing the first cut is the deepest, please? That it was like, seriously, no reaction. And the key thing here, Steve, is nobody believes that. That's why there was no reaction, because nobody believes that. And I feel like those two things are an indication of how tiny the Democrats' support structure really is in this society. I think it's probably around 20%.
Well, let's face reality. Most conservatives are live and let live, right?
Sure.
It's like, we don't care what you do. As long as you don't hurt somebody, as long as you don't try to shove it down my throat, as long as you don't try to put it into my living room, I don't care what you do.
Privacy of your own bedroom. Remember when we used to say that? Go ahead and do it. We don't care. Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if you want to be die at a young age and, get all kinds of horrible diseases and whatever. Go ahead and do it. and you want to be completely unnatural and immoral, and
I shouldn't have
I
thrown
could
this
keep
one
going.
to Steve. I know.
Hey, it's Toxically Masculine Tuesday, and I don't agree with it. I'm not agreeing with it. I think it's unnatural. I would never have anything to do with it. And as far as I'm concerned, like I said, they can do whatever they want. Just keep it away from me. I don't want anything to do with it.
And we don't want to watch it.
So as long as you're doing your own thing and you're not shoving it down my throat, I don't care what the hell
in our
it is
movies
you
and TV. And well, unless it's 2 penthouse pets and there's a video camera involved, a high 4K video camera, then we want to watch it. But other than that, no, we don't want to watch it. And it's just, to me, it was like, wow, 4,000 people in here, and like 3 or 4 or 5 went, yeah, and that was it. And I'm like, everybody else.
Well, I mean, because it's not true. It's not true. People don't.
Yeah, first of all, it's not true.
You go around, like I said, I probably am one of the, I disagree with it 1,000,000%, but I would never go up to somebody and go, hey, and harass them or hurt them or do anything to them. It's just like I said, just don't do it around me. But on the same token, if you're invited, like if I were to invite somebody into my home, I don't want some guy dry humping his girlfriend at my house on my sofa because it's inappropriate. I don't want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just their outlook on these things is just so ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, it just shows that, Rod lives in a bubble and has no clue what's going on in the White House.
Well, he's 80 and he's going senile. I was surprised you didn't get up and see Mike Bear in the audience going, hey, shut up, Rod. Shut up.
Well, I was a little far away. I don't think Rod would have heard me, but all right.
And you didn't go through the time warp thing either because we were all disappointed
because
by
that has
that.
to be between 2 and 4 in the morning, and I had to get Dave Barra home for his beauty sleep because he just, if he's not in bed by a certain time, it's just not going to work for Dave Barra. So one of these days, I'm going to make a special trip down to Caesar's Palace.
2 a.m. after you finish your
2
pizza.
and 4 a.m.
Take a walk.
I asked some.
Take a walk. And
I asked some elevator operators about the time machine elevator, and they all pretended they didn't know anything about it. I think they were lying. All right.
Just see Tom Jones. See Tom Jones when he comes to Vegas.
Tom is coming in May, and I'm thinking about that. Although
I bet he won't say one word about fags.
Probably not, because Tom Jones is hetero.
He's had both hips replaced. They say he's dancing like crazy now.
Yeah, he is the original guy who got panties thrown on stage.
Yeah.
I used to work his shows in Vegas,
the
Hollywood Theater, when he used to fill in for Copperfield back in the day. So those were always really good events. We used to sell. I was a bartender, so I used to sell lots of wine and champagne when he played.
Oh yeah,
we made good money on those days. Yeah.
Yeah, let me tell you, when I saw him like 22 years ago with my ex-wife in like 2003, I think was my first trip to Vegas, and these women started throwing their panties on stage, right? So he picks one up, and he's all sweaty, and he starts rubbing his face with the panties, right? And literally, this is hilarious. This is a macho man. This is a man who would fit in on Toxically Masculine Tuesday. He goes, you can forget a face. You didn't have to say the second part. All right, one last story here, guys, before we get out of here. Donald Trump was interviewed by Clay Travis, as I started to say, and Clay Travis asked him about the Kennedy files. This was Donald Trump's response. It's kind of interesting. Let's listen to it.
You released the JFK files.
Yeah.
Do you think Oswald killed JFK personally?
I do, and I've always held that.
Yeah.
Of course, was he helped? And based on the papers, we released 88,000.
I know.
Okay? And in fact, there was some that they needed a little more time. And we said, go over to the office. We'll show you.
Yeah.
So nobody could say they've been released. I think the papers have turned out to be somewhat unspectacular.
Yeah, I think that's true.
All right, and maybe that's a good thing.
Do you think back now, it's only been 8 months since Butler, Pennsylvania. Do you think that guy acted alone based on what you've seen, that crazy man? And do you think back to your connection now to JFK? Because thank the Lord he missed. But people for the next 100 years would have been talking about that like we talk about JFK.
It might be anywhere. I can't really be sure. I really can, I'm sure, because it bothers me that he had 3.
Okay, so this is, to me, extremely newsworthy for a couple of reasons. You guys know I have a theory about the Kennedy assassination, and that had to do with aliens and Kennedy, what Kennedy was going to do along those lines. But basically what Trump said is, Lee Harvey Oswald, yeah, I think he was asked if he killed the president. I don't know that he fired the fatal shot, but he definitely shot at the president. He definitely hit the president, from my perspective. But he said he had help. He said, did he have help? He raised that question. These documents so far, I've gone through many of them, do not seem to answer that question. And then he suggested the possibility, probability, I think, that that the guy who shot at him had help, which there's a lot of indication of. Steve, you are a policeman. What do you think of that kind of statement? And do you think that he has a point?
Well, I personally don't believe that Oswald fired a shot. That's my theory based on everything I have researched into the JFK shooting. I've interviewed. I know that you disagree, but I'm going to tell you, I have interviewed people who were on the scene, who were there, who were in law enforcement at the time. And I'm telling you, in my opinion, Oswald had nothing to do with it. There were other shooters that took the president out. He was not one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can debate this if we get our show. We can debate this all day long. I've got stuff to back it up. I've got witness statements, the whole 9 yards.
That will make for a very interesting documentary. If you'd like to fund that, let me know. We need a couple 100,000 to go shoot aliens and JFK. And Steve Doran and
I mean, just like the magic bullet. What a bunch of bullshit! That is the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard. Anybody who's ever fired a freaking rifle knows that is horse shit.
We're going to disagree about that too. TV's
Mike, you're showing your ignorance right now, like hugely showing your ignorance when it comes to firearms.
We
totally.
Okay,
ignorant.
Does anybody have any doubt how fucking good this show is going to be if we get it funded?
Ignorant.
200 grand. 200 grand.
Ignorant.
TV's Blake Wally. TV's Blake Wally.
Go take your Glock 20. Go take your Glock 22 and shoot at something and take a look at the bullet. After you shoot it through something like a magazine, and take a look at the bullet and see what happens. Let alone a person, and then the back seat of a car, and then another person. I mean, give me a freaking break, dude.
I can't wait to make this show with you. TV's, and we got to find a cutie to be on the show too. TV's Blake Wally.
Blake Wally's pretty cute.
It's not a cutie. Blake, what do you think about these statements by Trump? What do you think about Butler? What do you think about the JFK files? Honestly, there's not a lot in them that I've noticed. What do you think?
Well, I won't choose a side between the two of you, you and Steve there, but I will agree that Oswald was definitely the patsy and the fall guy. Whether he shot from the window, I guess I'm not quite sure on that one, but somebody fired shots out of it. And yeah, there's probably multiple. And that's another thing I'll agree on, Steve, is that the magic bullet theory is ridiculous. There were multiple shooters, so there was an organized conspiracy. I guess that, one more interesting thing I picked up. I heard Roger Stone, since he was a confidant of Richard Nixon, apparently admitted to him one time that he said he didn't say exactly who did it. He just said that he wasn't willing to kill to get in the position, meaning he was directing it at Lyndon B. Johnson was willing to kill Kennedy, whereas Nixon was content to wait till the next election. So I think there's definitely some smoke there. It was an organized conspiracy with a lot of people, and they still are dragging this thing out. They won't give us the review, the synopsis.
Well, or the documents that prove the conspiracy do not exist. Johnson ordered the hit on JFK. Johnson was in no position to order anything. He was simply placed in office. He knew about it, but he was not the guy who gave the order. Dr. Brooks Agnew, any thoughts on Trump's thoughts on Oswald having help and whether or not the Butler killer had help? We know that's pretty sure, right?
Well, I definitely think he had help. You know, this if you and you guys have been to the area, I've only seen it in pictures, but hitting a moving target like that, even if it's moving slow, is not easy to do, especially from a distance. And I think it was rather rushed. It was hasty. It wasn't the best place to do a coup like this, but they had to do it because the place he was getting ready to arrive in just a few minutes after the shot, if the shot hadn't been taken, and the speech he was going to make was going to change the world. And they did not want that change to happen.
We were going to go to the moon with the Russians, not in competition with them. Hi, old combat vet. Thanks for the input. The limo driver video is fake. It's AI. The limo driver, what you're seeing is a reflection off of his wristwatch as he turns around to see what's going on in the back seat right before the president's head is blown off by J.D. Tippett on the grassy knoll. And that's a great question, Brooks, because that is one of the things that Steve and I have to do is I've stood on the spot where the badge man was shooting at the president's head. And I think I could have made that shot. And I'm ask Steve. I don't know anything about guns. Steve, I'm going to be really interested if Steve says that's a hard shot. Because remember, the limo was only rolling about 10, 15 miles an hour.
That's fast when it comes to
there's no question that there were multiple shooters. There was more than two. And there was more than two. And even though it was hasty, I agree with Brooks. It was put together very quickly. But that's why they had to have more than two shooters, because they had to have people at different angles to make sure he was hit and to make sure he was taken out.
Right. I can prove two. I can't prove any others. There is a possibility of a third, but there's a lot to put together. It's going to be a great documentary. If we ever get the funds to make it, let's hope that's happening soon. All right, guys, thanks for your input. Oh, by the way, my take on the Kennedy assassination is available at my blog site, mikebrehr.blogspot.com. Right at the top, there's a video from Odyssey. I've got to get that downloaded and re-uploaded to YouTube and some other channels where it can be seen a little bit better. But it's I kind of run through everything that's in the book, and there have been new developments since then. So, that's where you go. That's where you look, and see what you think. I know Steve disagrees with me. We're gonna hash it out. So we'll find out.
That's what we always do.
I hope we
see. That's what makes us toxically masculine, because we can disagree and discuss, and we still leave as friends.
That's right.
I mean, there's lots of
little bitches. Remember when I first met Steve on the set of we were auditioning for a show about the Bermuda Triangle. It was in Jacksonville, Florida. And Steve and I went to lunch, and he's like, "Hey, have a beer with me." He sat down, we had a beer. We started flipping each other's shit, and the director was like all panicked because he thought we hated each other.
They thought we hated each other's guts.
Yeah.
They actually put us in separate. They had these Suburbans, and they actually put us in separate vehicles because they were like, "You guys are going to kill each other." And it's like we're like best of friends. We like hang out when we're not filming.
Dude, this guy's awesome. I love this guy.
So, but anyway, it was the funniest thing you ever saw, because it's like, somebody would always try to intervene because they thought we were going to hurt each other.
These simpy little Hollywood producers who didn't even know how guys interact. It was crazy.
Right.
Yes, the Oval Office was redecorated after John F. Kennedy left for Dallas. It was the redecoration was overseen by Lady Bird Johnson. They replaced a very tasteful blue-gray carpet, which Kennedy had inherited from Eisenhower, with a blood red carpet with blood red curtains. The Kennedy people, when they got back, ordered the curtains taken down because it looked like blood was dripping from the walls, which was obviously the symbolic intent. And then those got taken down. However, the 33rd degree Freemason new vice president, President Lyndon Johnson, came in and basically he took John F. Kennedy's rocking chair. He didn't give it to the family. He kept it. So he basically sat there on the previous king's throne, which was his rocking chair in the Oval Office, and bathed in his blood. It was all symbolic. It was all Masonic. It goes really deep, and it's really creepy. And one of the things we're going to talk about, Steve, when we finally do this documentary is why did they give Jackie red roses instead of the yellow rose of Texas? Really interesting question. That's what we'll answer. All right, guys, thanks for being here. Great show. Appreciate each and every one of you in the audience and each and every one of you on this panel. For TV's Blake Wally, Dr. Brooks Agnew, and Steve Doran, the fucking trail boss. Have a great one. We will see you next Tuesday. Jen and I are back tomorrow on Tell the Truth Wednesday. Have a blast. Have a great Tuesday. I don't know what I'm eating for dinner.